Okay, so everyone, welcome to this first unit. It's going to be strange for me to record all this before the fact, but I'm sure I'm going to get into a routine of it. So these are our objectives for this session. It really is the same session I would do face to face with you if we had started the course in the intensive format. The normal first class, 3-hour class, normally is going through the outline, going through the expectations, going through the teaching format, and all of these things. So we'll cover exactly the same thing, but I will do it in a sort of asynchronous way where I'll be recording all this, and then you can always ask me questions at the end of the morning session tomorrow morning on Monday. So these are some of what we will be looking at, objectives we'll be looking at today. So first of all, welcome to the course. You have my email there at UPI if you need to contact me. Some of you have done that already. I would recommend that you don't use the Moodle messaging service because the icon in Moodle for messages is tiny and often I miss it. And then students feel really frustrated. So make sure you use the email rather than the internal messaging function on Moodle. You've got I'm fairly active on Twitter as well, so you've got my Twitter handle there. I'm actually, in terms of social media, if you want to connect with me and stay connected in the future, I'm fairly active on Twitter, but just for professional matters. I only use Facebook with family and friends, so don't try on that. But academia.edu is something, we'll look at this at the end of the program, but creating a social presence as a scholar is really important too. So you should be looking at these other platforms that I'm going to mention now. So academia.edu, EDOU, is a Facebook for scholars, basically. So you can access it through Facebook. You don't need to create a new password or anything like that. And you will see once you're in it that it's a platform very much like Facebook. So you can follow people, you get notifications, but it's all to do with writing and scholarships and publications. So it's fairly good. And get the free version, by the way. Don't get conned into paying for it. The free version is totally fine for your needs. Otherwise, obviously, you've got LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is a bit commercial. There isn't so much sort of good stuff happening in terms of research. But you should definitely start maybe creating a profile on Researchgate. So if you're not familiar with Researchgate, it's another platform, social media platform, where academics are posting their publication. The great thing with the Researchgate is that scholars often will post what they call pre-publication. So if I submit something to a publication, it will take probably 2 or 3 months before it's actually processed fully and fully edited and actually is published. And then you have to access it through a library. But in that window period before, when you have the last draft and it's not final, there's still modifications being done. Often journals don't object to you actually publishing that on the platform like ResearchGate. So you actually have access to really very sort of cutting edge, just published, sometimes not even published yet material that you can download straight from ResearchGate. So I really encourage you to do that. And if you get on there, you can connect with me as well. So those are the platforms that you might want to look at. We're going to be talking about blogging. So I have a blog too. I do a lot of work around universal design for learning. To be honest, I haven't been active on the blog for a while now since I've moved to Victoria because work has been a bit of a madness. But it's archived, and there were years where I was a lot more active on blogging. So you have some of the blogs there. So today we're going to look at course objectives. We're going to do a detailed reading of the course outline and offer some clarifications if they're needed. We're going to look at the objectives of the course, the teaching format of the course, the assessments, and then we'll spend some time looking at class climate, specifically the notion of safe space. And then we'll have an exploratory discussion on nature and objective educational research. That will be more in the afternoon, right? So that's will lead into that for your afternoon. And then we'll take questions from 12 to 12:30 in a collaborate synchronous session on Monday morning on the 6th of July. So we'll take some time exploring Moodle. You should be able to see my screen if I change, so you will be able to still see that. I hope it works. It should follow whatever I show you on screen. So as you open Moodle, I know some of you have never used Moodle, so I want to take the time to explain to you how it works. So first of all, you've got your dashboard on the side. I'm going to put it in English so you have the right readings. There we go. So you've got dashboard here, and dashboard is going to be where you find your courses. At this stage, you should have my course and your next course too. So you may have to click on 6110 to get into my course. Then this will appear. So at the very top, you have the sign-up sheet you don't need anymore. We've done that, except there's 3 students who still are going to have to schedule, maybe through email, the one-on-one chats, and we'll try and do them on Monday because I haven't met 3 of you. You've got a course outline Word format. For accessibility purposes, you have the course outline in PDF version. You have the general MED marking rubrics for the whole masters. This is an important link, the link to your Collaborate classroom. So this is where we're going to meet every day from 12 to 12:30 and 4:30 to 5. Then you have your course schedule. I would recommend that you open this and you keep an eye on this, because all the key dates and all the synchronous times are actually indicated on this. In brownish burgundy, it is all the synchronous session times, and all the rest are the regular sort of unit times. Let's go back to this. Then I explain to you the course readings you'll see later, because basically I'm collecting them from every unit. And then this is more for the post-course work on your assignments. At the very top, I'm creating a whole list of all the readings for the whole course, so that you can access them here easily in APA style if you want to reference them. And that will be open towards the end of the week once I've compiled them all on there. You have a little text on UDL lens of the user resources. This is because, as I've said, I work within Universal Design for Learning quite a lot. I'll talk about it a little bit later, which means that instead of adding one resource, I'll generally add 3 or 4 of different complexity, different length, different level of language. Often I'll try and complement that with some videos. So I find from experience, although this is meant to be providing added flexibility, if you don't explain it to students, the first sort of reaction can be daunting, because students see a lot of material and expect or feel that they expected to interact with all of it, and that's not the case. So it's just to reassure you of the intention behind providing as many resources as I do. It's to create flexibility and choice, and student choice. Doesn't mean you have to explore everything. It means you will be able to choose what you wish to explore. Here you have a little text on how we're dealing with the COVID crisis. It's going to reaffirm a message that you've heard me say already from the start, that there's going to be a lot of flexibility. This is why your full big assignments are not due in this week, but we're giving you the whole summer. We haven't wanted to get you started before the course started, but we're giving you as much flexibility as we can, so that the entire summer session is available to you to finish the course. Then you have a sign-up sheet there for one-on-one tutorials. If you're interested in this, I've stuck a few windows there for sessions on Monday night, Tuesday night, Thursday night, and Friday night. And then obviously during the rest of the summer, once you get back to the assignments, I'll create some more so you can connect with me and have access to formative feedback for the creation of your main assignments too. You have the full directives for all of the assignments here. Then you have the Q&A, general matters of the course. So if you're writing to me from Monday onwards, but you have a question and it pertains to the course and you think that everyone could benefit from it, then I would recommend you post it here, because then I will only answer one, but everyone will be able to see the answer, and then everyone will benefit from the answer. Likelihood is, if you have a query, other students probably have the same query, so it's worth answering, and you should actually post it there. Then you have the student lounge. Student lounge is not monitored by instructor. This is a sort of cafe space for you guys to have your discussions. It could be course related or it could not be course related. Absolutely up to you. You have 4 links there, and I'll maybe add some more for your convenience. I hope they still work, because I haven't checked them, but I'll recheck them. This is a course I run lots of times, so to a certain extent I do recycle some of the shell that I have used in previously. So sometimes if you see a broken link, do tell me, because it just means I haven't checked it properly. The links are to basically online educational magazines that will enable you to find some of those media posts that I'm encouraging you to contribute for assignment 2. So that's just that. It's basically some avenues for you to be able to find some of these readings if you want to introduce them. And then I'm only going to show you one of these, because afterwards the sections are pretty much the same. Every time you have a unit, you will have the date and the time of the unit. All times are PI times, obviously, so we don't get confused, although you're not all on PI, but still it'll be the easiest way of doing this. You have the title of the unit, though I think I haven't put the other titles. Yeah, I'll complement the other titles further down. And then you have the same setup. So you can't see this yet because I've hidden it. I didn't want people to rush into this before the time, but you will have introduction to the unit and a checklist of what you need to do for that unit. So this morning as you begin, that is open, and you will then see what we're aiming to do and what you're supposed to do, which will say watch this video and then prepare any questions that you may have for the 12 o'clock meeting. You have the readings, which I've already opened, and then you will have this PowerPoint that I'm using will be available in PowerPoint format. You have a virtual forum for each unit. That's where any discussions that we have, any questions I ask you to answer, any questions that you have for that unit will be done within that virtual form. It's to avoid having a form that gets too confusing because we have too much on it. So we're breaking it down in little forms. That way I know exactly what the question relates to. It relates to that unit, and that's where you post it. That's why I answer. You have the icebreaker activity, personal introductions, which many people have already contributed to. It's your first course on this program, so you need to build a sense of community, and this is going to be really important. So if you don't mind putting a photo, talking about your hobbies a little bit, talking about yourself, talking about your career, explain to people where you're located. Don't take it for granted. Many people are not on PI at the moment. So place that there. And here you have some readings. I'm trying to use open source PDFs mostly. If I have open source PDFs, then I will actually upload them for your convenience. In the readings, if I'm missing something, so if there's no indication in the readings, it's that it's a PDF and it's already there in the resources below. If I can't have it in open access PDF, I will post in the readings here a link to the library that will take you straight to the article. That's just for your convenience. Again, these readings, I'm not expecting you to do all these readings in the units. You probably won't have time to do much or if any reading between now and Friday. But don't forget that then you have the whole summer to do these longer assignments in depth. And so this is a sort of reference mini library that you can go back to and find the resources and the references that you need for your assignments that will be coming up. And then this repeats itself continuously. In section 6, which will come very quickly in this course, which will be Wednesday, you have a post for midpoint feedback to the instructor. Be at ease. If there's really something I can do to help you, this is a good point to informally bring it up. And then I can still have half the week to attend and address whatever it is that you're asking me to look at. So if you have suggestions, do make it before the end of the course. You can certainly email me directly, even from the beginning of the course. But if you are hesitant, then just put it in there, and I'll keep an eye on that. So there we go. We've done the tour of Moodle. I hope it's answered all your questions. Moodle will still open for the duration of your program, so that course is not going to disappear. And suddenly, even after Friday, you will have obviously normal access to this course. Sometimes it disappears in the sense that it doesn't appear on your dashboard, but then you just have to click in the dashboard. You have current, past, and present, or future, current, and present. So you just have to make sure you click on past. It may actually categorize after Friday as being a past course, but you will always be able to find it there and still contribute and act and be active on it. Use of the Collaborate room. So most of you have been on the Collaborate room because I organized this sort of 15 minutes with you. It has great benefits and great problems. So it's not a bad platform. As you see, there's a lot we can do from it. It is problematic in the sense that it can, if the connection isn't good, it's not going to let you put the video on. And then sometimes it's going to throw you out of the room if your connection is too weak, and then it's going to re-log you on. So don't panic. That happens frequently, that we are thrown off and then we are rejoining. If it's really bad, so when I'm speaking to you live at 12 and at 4:30, if the connection is really bad, let me know in the chat, and then I will make sure that I stop and we wait till the connection gets better. So if I break out, don't be silent. Tell me in the chat room that something's going on, and we'll wait. If it's really, really bad, sometimes I'll tell you, just let's all go. We'll leave the room and we re-enter the room. Sometimes that's actually sufficient to solve some of the technical problems that are happening there. All the sessions in Moodle will be recorded and they'll be posted on Moodle. So sorry, all the sessions on Collaborate will be recorded and posted on Moodle. So if you miss something, you can still access it. You can obviously use Moodle for your team presentations, for example, or for your own sort of 10-minute presentation of your question, if you wish. I may show you quickly how something works. Let's see. Have you go on Collaborate now? Actually, this is your entry as a student, so you may not have all the same functions. Okay, you don't have as many controls as I do, so I'm not going to be able to show you much, but I can still show you. So the chat room is this one. And here, if we're talking, you would be seeing all the comments that everyone is making. So if I ever break out and you can't hear me, put here, the sound is breaking out, and then you post, and then it'll come up, and I keep an eye on this and I look at it. This allows you to see who's online. And this, if you are in presenter mode, which I can do when you're presenting as a team, you will have ability to share your screen, share the PowerPoint, share a whiteboard, share all sorts of things. Okay, and here you don't have much choice either. So here you have a polling tool when you're a moderator. You could poll your class. So if you want to make it more interactive, there's a polling tool which is embedded in this. But I'll show you this before the team presentation begin. And at this stage, I'm still hesitating as to whether we might do it on Moodle. Sorry, on Zoom, because UPI Faculty of Education has a Zoom account, and sometimes people find for large groups where lots of people are active that Zoom actually functions better. So I'll talk to the dean and see if that is free for the Thursday. That might sort that problem. Okay. You've seen all this. So course objectives. So you've seen I like to put the course objectives in two different ways. In an academic way, first of all, and then secondly, I reframe them in a way that makes sense in lay terms to mid-career sort of teachers. But here I'm just going to go through the objectives as I said in terms of academic objectives to examine the various stages of the research process in their sequence and their rationale. So we're going to look at the different things that you have to do to carry out a study successfully, acquire the skills necessary to produce a literature review, and that's one of the steps. It's a complicated sort of technique, so we're going to teach you how to do that technique. To examine the various methodological options available to the researcher, we'll do part of this together, and the second part will be done as a collaborative team assignment on the Thursday afternoon, where you're going to be talking to us about the methodology, so explaining some of the choices that we have. To explore the process of data collection in its various formats. So we'll look at that towards the end of the format. So how do we collect data and analyze data? That's the second point, hurdles and opportunities. So we'll look really in detail as to how complicated it can be to start collecting data and analyzing data. And then to explore the various evaluation criteria available in assessing the quality of studies and research findings. So we're showing you how to create a proposal. And then at the end, we're teaching you how to critique other people's proposals or their studies. So how to write a critical review of a journal article. We show you what should be in there. And then at the end, we enable you to use that knowledge to go back and look at other people's studies and say, right, did they follow what I was just taught? Or can I be critiquing that work because something is missing or something could have been done differently? And the critical review of a journal article is just a great tool, a great exercise to learn to do on your first course, because it's a very frequent academic exercise. So in a lot of your master's courses, you'll be asked to do it again. So you're learning it on this course, and then you'll be asked to do the same thing, and you will become much more confident at it as you practice it further. So it'll be your first practice. Teaching format. So this course, even when we deliver it normally in class, I tend to say it's active learning. What is active learning and how is integrated in the course? So if we're live, I would open this up for discussion in a large group, but obviously I'm going to have to sort of talk to myself a little bit here. So what is active learning? Usually when I do this in class, students say, okay, yeah, I've got a good idea. It's student-centered. It's about the student having a different role than just a listener. It's about being experiential in that learning. So all of these things are true. Active learning isn't a theory in itself. It's actually a very sort of wishy-washy term, but it's quite a convenient term. So it hasn't got any theoretical purity. No one's quite able to describe exactly what it is because it isn't a theory in itself. I would say it's more of a trend. It's more of a movement in education that is pulling together different things from different theory. And so within active learning, you're definitely going to find a lot of experiential learning, this notion of bringing the world into the classroom. You are definitely going to see elements of student-centeredness. So it should be teaching that is student-centered rather than teacher-centered. It definitely, the word active enables the learner to have a different role, and sometimes very creative role and sometimes very innovative role. It tends to be that active learning, there's always a component of technology-rich learning. And actually, if you see certain universities, like when I worked at McGill, we had active learning classrooms. And when you walk into an active learning classroom, it's a space usually where the technology is used to bring forward some of what I've just described in terms of student-centeredness. So normally, instead of having rows, you have hubs. Instead of having a board at the front, you have 4 whiteboards and projectors around the room. The controls of the projectors are not with the teacher, they are in each hub. Usually there's not even a teacher desk or that's been removed. The teacher's fluctuating. He's a facilitator, they're a facilitator, they're walking around and they don't sit somewhere. So it's really recentering the whole attention of the classroom onto the learners themselves for collaboration. So collaboration is a huge part of this concept as well. So again, it's not a very pure concept, but it's quite a convenient sort of little sort of package to bring together a lot of the theories that are going to be interesting in teaching and learning. You've got a reading if you're interested in active learning in this section, but I don't expect you to look at now. But if you're interested, you can look at it. It's sort of a literature review of what active learning has been and how we might be able to define its boundaries. Okay. Use of virtual forms. I've explained what the virtual forms are already when I looked at that. So that's the space where we're going to be able to do all of these interactions. So very interactive. I hope that you don't just listen to this, but right away you're able to jump into the virtual form and put forward your questions. You will see that in certain of the units, I am asking specific questions in your half day in your unit, and I'm asking you to go into the virtual forum, and that's why I'm asking you to answer those questions so that we can engage in a conversation. So this is an important part of this teaching format too. It's going to be what we call dialogical. So it creates a dialogue between you and myself. It's not a one-way stream. And then obviously we've talked about the flipped classroom a little bit too, and you've got a reading on the flipped classroom if you've never encountered them. The notion of flipped classroom comes from a guy that teaches at Harvard, and his name now obviously escapes me. I'm going to blank out like this. It must be early Alzheimer's. Mazur, Eric Mazur. I'm not too bad on the Alzheimer's front yet. So Eric Mazur is a science prof at Harvard, and he came up with this notion of flipped classroom. And he really was looking at a regular classroom before COVID and saying, my students don't learn much by me lecturing, and so I should change this. And he's decided that really, and he's proven this in his teaching and learning practice, that really by giving all the information to the learner before they walk into the classroom, he's able then to keep the classroom time for more interactive interactions. And that's exactly what we're going to do on this little course, because you will be autonomous and self-paced for most of the way you work through the material, and then we're going to meet to problem solve for these half an hours at the end of the half day. Okay, you're going to have seen a lot of people have moved back to this notion of flipped classroom. It's not ideal. We'll see that the flipped classroom creates problems too, but it has been particularly convenient for this what we call the COVID pivot. All these universities that have had to switch format very quickly, and the flipped classroom has been able to address a lot of the issues that people were having with this pivot. So these are some of the items that are going to be important in the teaching format and the flavor of my classroom. This notion of active learning, this notion here behind the virtual form, this notion of dialogical education, which really the background of that, if you're interested, is social constructivism. So this notion that we're not given knowledge, it's not a commodity, it's not passed on to us. It's something that is constructed, hence constructivism, something that the learner construct. And social constructivists, in particular, with people like Vygotsky in the early 20th century and scholars since then, have argued that actually the way that we construct knowledge as learners is together, is in collaboration. Hence the virtual forums, hence this element of discussion right through the course. And then this other notion of the flipped classroom. I would say that the fourth element is this notion of universal design for learning. So this is really suitable. I talk about this in all my courses, but because you're an inclusive cohort, we're going to accentuate this even more and give you even more little material in modeling UDL in this course. What is universal design for learning? It's an approach to inclusion which differs slightly from what we've had so far in education. So far in education, we've had what we would call, and I'll give you a breakdown of this terminology because it might be very helpful in this program as you begin. In inclusion, we've had really four models. We've had something called personalized learning. And this, I mean, personalized learning in the way the term was used up to now, because now with technology, people have re-hijacked the term. And when they talk about personalized learning online, it's something very different that they mean. But before that, in the literature for about 30 years, you're going to have see people talked about in personalized learning. So the crucial difference in terms of inclusion for personalized learning was that it's an approach that tends to keep people together in the same classroom, but assume that certain students are not able to meet the same objectives as the other, and therefore they will not be assessed using the same assessment tools. So personalized learning is one little form of inclusion that has been very, very popular, particularly with students who have intellectual disabilities, because you want the social contact, you want that social capital creation, you want them in the same classroom so that they establish networks and they function as regular citizens. But you are accepting that you're putting them in a grade where they may not be able to complete the grade objectives, and therefore they may not be able to be assessed on the same assessment criteria. So that's what we call personalized learning, when the objectives are modified and the assessment is modified. A little less sort of full scale than that, you have something which we have called so far individualized learning. Individualized learning is an umbrella term that in inclusion we've used to describe situations when, again, students are mainstream, so they put in a grade and in mainstream most of the time. They follow the same course objectives as their peers. They are assessed with the same tools as their peers. There may be accommodations, but that doesn't change the actual objectives of the assessment. But we are sometimes providing them with remedial action. So that could be in-class remedial action or out-of-class remedial action. So that was the second sort of mode of doing inclusion. Since we've been doing inclusion now for about 30 years, it hasn't been just one framework. There's been different approaches. Individualized learning is sort of symbolized or demonstrated or recognized or or embodied, if you want, in the IEPs. So when you do this IEP, this notion IEP, it really is the ethos of individualized learning. This notion that the students are mainstreams, they follow the same objectives, they follow the same assessment, but there's this whole series of interventions that come into play in terms of equity, in order to put them in the same place as their peers. Then you have a third avenue in inclusion, which is differentiation. So differentiation, you're going to refer back to someone called Carol Tomlinson, who was a US prof, she's still active, who has created this term of differentiation. Differentiation has been very different than what we've seen at that point historically in inclusion, because unlike individualized learning, it doesn't rely on teaching assistants, on remediations happening outside the classroom. It argues that the teacher themselves is able to do a whole class approach with all abilities within that classroom. So Carol Tomlinson argues that differentiation happens in this way. The teacher walks in, the teacher assesses the needs, and this is on a daily basis. The teacher assesses the needs. The teacher then does this little juggling act when they have their objectives in mind, but they very quickly design different pathways to the same objective. And quickly, like this, on the spot, they are offering their students different modes of getting to that objective. And differentiation sort of implies that you will be doing this as routine on different days, in different classrooms, and even within the same classroom, you may change those pathways. So it may mean putting students in teams, but then you switch them around. And so it's not a rigid approach. It's something very fluid that you rethink organically as you're working with the students. So that's been very popular in education, especially historically, if we look at the last decade. Problem I find with differentiation is that it's quite daunting. Carol Tomlinson is a very experienced older teacher. If you ask me to be doing differentiations, I don't find that odd. I can walk into a high school. It sort of comes second nature because I've been, a teacher for a very long time. But for a lot of the younger teachers I support, a lot of the teachers I see in my masterclass, differentiation is still very daunting. Still a huge juggling act. So that's where UDL comes in, because UDL is sort of the last historical progression of these sort of frameworks towards inclusion. And UDL is radically different in the sense that it no longer asks the teacher to come in and do that assessment of need and then do that juggling act and on the spot and just in time and create those pathways within the classroom. It's actually a design perspective. So really UDL sort of presumes that there's diversity in learners and ask the teacher, as they are planning a class, as they're planning even before they meet their students, in September, that they are designing all of their delivery and all of their assessment in an inclusive way. So creating these multiple pathways, but creating them conceptually before they even walk into the classroom. So UDL is terribly useful because it's less scary for teachers, because we're not asking them, first of all, to identify needs and juggle their teaching material on the spot. We're saying, do this at the design stage. Do this when you select your Your activities do this when you design your assessment. That's where you need to think about diversity, and that's where you need to inject that flexibility into the very format of what you do systematically before you even meet the students. Argument being that diversity exists, so why not design for inclusion before you even walk in? So that's what UDL is in a nutshell. And then if you get more into detail, you will see that advocates for UDL have argued that there's three parts of the brains that do very different activities in terms of learning, and that the three dimensions of learning are the representations, which means it's the input, it's what we provide to students, so the lecturing and the note-taking, reading books, accessing websites, that input as far as students are concerned. The second is output. So UDL advocates call that action and expression, when we are asking students to contribute, participate, complete assessment, create content, articulate a message. And then the third dimension, they say, and UDL are all, the original advocates of UDL are all neuropsychologists. So they really show this in terms of where these activities are located in the brain, if you're interested. And they said that the third dimension of teaching and learning is an engagement. It's the effective dimension of learning, is that learners need to be connected emotionally with their learning. And they locate this in a different part of the brain. And that leads you to the third principle of UDL, which is the engagement. So in terms of inclusive design, what the next step is, UDL advocates are saying, well, we need the maximum flexibility in each of these dimensions. So maximum flexibility in how you provide information to the learner, maximum flexibility in how the learner provides you with information, and maximum flexibility in terms of how you're trying to connect emotionally and effectively to the learner in terms of the learning. So here in this course, you will see that in terms of representation, that is why I give you lots of different readings, different levels of reading, different depth of reading, different complexity of reading. I'll complement that with video when I can, and give you lots of different pathways into the material. But you take a pick, you make a choice. It's not about doing it all. It's about seeing what fits your needs and your interests. And particularly in terms of the second principle, multiple ways of action and expression, I'm going to try and give you as much flexibility in how you present information to me and to the rest of the class. Hence, for assessment, all of your assessment, apart from 7 and 8, are in any format that you wish. So you can do a podcast, you can do a video, you can do a PowerPoint, you can do a PowerPoint with voiceover, you can do animation, you can do a media montage. This is what I've been offered so far by students. So that list is not exhaustive. I'm just including it through my practice, things that I've seen students present to me. If you find other format, they'd be acceptable as well. You have that full flexibility in how you provide that content to me. And that's part of a UDL reflection as well. I've spent a little bit of time explaining this because I think as we get you into the program, since I'm an inclusion specialist as well, we may as well start tackling some of these concepts as we move into the course itself, even if the course is strictly about research, design. A lot of these reflections on pedagogy are not going to be lost for you because they're laying down the foundations of where we're moving you as a cohort. Assessment. So I'm going to go into the outline and I'm going to give you a little bit of feedback on the assessment. Here we are. So assessment 1, blog and personal reflection. So tomorrow morning, I will discuss what the blog is. But the blog, I can already give you an idea now. A blog is basically a format which has appeared because of the democratization of academic writing. There's been a lot of democratization, I can't pronounce that word, but the act of becoming more democratic for any writing, right? So previously, to produce news, you had to be a journalist, and there were gatekeepers, right? It's a profession, you needed to be recognized as being a member of that profession. Then you had an editor, and you produced content within the field of news and media. That has gone. Now you're seeing even units like the BBC, who have usually at the end of their website saying, have you witnessed this? Do you want to write us a piece about it? So there's been a huge democratic explosion to who contributes content to news. It's a lot more open, a lot more diversified now. There's no longer that role of gatekeeper, of editor, of it being sort of this professional status thing. This you will also see in academia. And first of all, I would say book publishing is the second one. So to publish a book, you needed an agent, you had an editor, you went through this whole sort of rigmarole of showing your status, being given that status, and being recognized as someone who had access to that voice. That has gone out the window. You have people now who are self-publishing and then becoming extremely popular. People who find all sorts of doors now. There is no longer that role of gatekeeper, of someone giving you credibility as a writer in terms of fiction and book writing. So it's exactly the same process, and this has happened through the beginning of the 21st century, and it's been actually probably the biggest revolution that you are going to sort of witness as citizens. The third part of this revolution has been academic writing. So in the same way, academic writing was something extremely rigid with very clear parameters that had clear gatekeepers, these editors of journals that were stored in libraries. Well, that has exploded. And now academic writing is actually more and more diversified. And this is what we're going to see in this course. One of those units is going to look specifically at that. So if you start a course thinking that the only place where you're going to find academic writing is in academic journals, you are going to be wrong. You're going to be erring from the start. So I'm going to wave a flag right there and say academic writing now is all around you, which is great because, again, it's been this huge democratic explosion of this freedom of content production, which has been really a tremendous thing for the field. But it does mean for you that it makes you, as consumers of research, it makes your life a lot more difficult, because we will see that now, and you'll see this on Tuesday, that now you have to develop a sixth sense for anything that you pick up anywhere to determine, just in terms of tone, whether it's academic writing or it's not academic writing. It's going to be the tone and the process of the writing. It's not going to be its origin. Its origin is never going to be able to tell you exactly whether that's academic writing or not academic writing. So all this, and we'll come back to it on day 2, all this to say that a blog is being a result of this explosion. So a blog is normally something which, for our purpose in research, is usually academic writing, but is produced for much more of a mass market. So it's open, what we call open resources. It's something that is not going to be locked. You don't get any password. It's going to be on someone's website. Why is it going to be a blog rather than just post to your friends? Well, again, it's the tone. So there are going to be 3 elements: the audience, the target. Who is it targeting? It's targeting professionals, peers that are of equal ranks. It's preparing that message for that audience, not your friends, not your family, for those professional colleagues. The words, obviously, a blog is going to be a sort of mixture between media writing, in the sense that you're allowed to entice your writer, you're allowed to use the first person, you're allowed to say you're allowed to pull your writer in with catchy headlines and titles, but it's still academic writing. So in depth, your tone is still going to be fairly professional. You're still going to be using sources, even if they're not always referenced. One question you might have is, do I use references in a blog? So if you look at my blogs, I do sometimes. If you are using something which is definitely screams at, this is not mine, I'm using a reference to someone else's, you would still have to reference them. And so it's not APA referencing. You would just literally write references, and you'd find a way of introducing your references at the bottom, usually still APA, but not in a very strict sort of formatting, pagination, but it still would be there. So that is what a blog is. It's become sort of hybrid between a formal paper, a journal article, but it's much smaller, easier to digest, targeted for still a professional audience, more catchy in tone, more journalistic in presentation. So you're going to have to do that juggling act of producing this new text. It's going to be a great experience for you in this course, because it's one of the tools that, as producer of scholarship, producer of research, you are increasingly having to do. A blog is a very sort of popular means of getting your research across to people. So someone might be doing a journal article still through a traditional publication, but then at the same time, they will produce a blog, and because that's easier to read and it's more catchy, and they know more people are going to access that. So this notion of visibility and public awareness is going to be something that we'll keep going back to, because as a researcher, you don't want just to create research, you want it to be read. And so increasingly, we have to see the process through, and we don't just do all that writing and all that research, but we actually are very keen to ourselves find the target audience and make sure that it gets into their hands in a format that is easily digestible for them. And sometimes the blog is going to be the answer. Number two, various media sources. So you will see that there are already media sources in Moodle. So at every unit, I will talk about them and introduce them a little bit. I'm concerned when we're looking at them, I'm not going to look at them in terms necessarily of content of the issue that is central to the piece. I'm going to look at it from the perspective of methodology and research design. So every time I'm going to say, is this worthy of research? We're going to discuss together that now there's some really hot research. Sometimes research really hot. Sometimes it's really boring. What makes it hot? What makes it, how do we get the pulse on the public's and the field's needs for certain topics? So that's one of the objectives in this, that we're not just creating this in a bubble. You're not creating research for you. You're creating research so it's read. So dealing with these media sources is going to give you a feel for what people are on the lookout for what are the kind of questions that people really want the answers to. What's hot research? It's also going to enable you to develop a critical mind. So you're going to look at these little news items and decide what kind of methodology is being used here, what kind of information am I being given, and if it's not given, then I'm going to ask you to hypothesize what would be the kind of methodology that would be useful here. How might we tackle this? What kind of research question might we use to tackle the kind of phenomena which is discussed in the paper itself? So you're going to do this, and on 3 of the items, I'm going to introduce them all. I think there's about 16. And then you're going to select 3 of those to do a sort of critique. You can do 3 self-standing responses, or you can merge them into one. I'm sort of doing half the work for you because I'm starting the conversations in the class. And if you're a listener and if you pay attention, a lot of the ideas will be there. It'll just be for you to push that further and then to complete it. 1 and 2, and actually most of the assignments apart from 7, 8, and 9 can be done in any format that you want. So you can actually do this in a video. It can be a vlog as opposed to a blog. A vlog is a video log. The same thing that your reflection on a video piece can easily be done in terms of video, podcast, PowerPoint. It's very suitable for this exercise. It's a reflection exercise. It's not a writing exercise. So I'm not going to ask you to write this. I'm going to ask you to synthesize your thinking on what you're looking at. Assignment 3 is for Wednesday afternoon. I have talked to all of you about this. Identify a research question that will lead you into your proposal. So very short, 10 minutes. It should take you about 5-6 minutes to explain the question, and then you're getting a little bit of feedback from your peers. And then I'll follow up with a little bit of written feedback to you as well, so you can recalibrate if you need. It's going to be a great session because sometimes one of the issues is when we design, because we know what we want to look at, we tend to be very centric in the way we design a question. And sometimes it needs to be more explicit or framed in a different way for other people to understand it. So having that peer feedback and a feedback from me is going to enable you to maybe tweak your research question. Sometimes you're going to adapt it, clarify it, reframe it a little bit. There's probably going to be a little bit of last minute work that follows up after that presentation. After that, we're going to go on to the drafting of the literature review. So tomorrow we're going to look this afternoon. So we're going to look at the different steps of the research process. One of the steps, obviously, is the design of the question, and one of the steps is the review of literature. We're going to explain to you in one of the units why that is, what it is, how we do it. It's a very technical process. So I'm going to explain to you how to do it, and then by then you will have you have looked for you will have identified your research question. You'll be able to do a literature review for your research question. And obviously, it's going to be your first attempt at the literature review. So we may have to tweak it. You'll get lots of formative feedback from me, and you'll be able to adjust that. We'll do a practice in class too. So you'll have a dry run together collectively, and then we'll do the full thing afterwards. Assignment 5, classic 3-on quantitative methods and simple survey. So I'm going to present to you for assignment 6 a lot of methodologies that you will be able to look at and explore and then present to your classroom. Those will be qualitative methods. In order to balance this, I wanted to make sure that you had a little bit of exposure to what simple quantitative methods look like. Obviously, quantitative methodology can become very complicated. In a course like this, we know you're not going to be engaging with heavy quantitative methods. So we've decided to include a very simple survey design, and that will be done on one of your activities in the unit. So you'll be able to complete that as you do the units. It should be done, overnight or something like that. It's going to be very simple, and you don't have to carry out the survey. You just have to design it. and we'll have lots of supporting resources for you there. On Thursday afternoon, you're going to be presenting with your team a quality methodology of your choice. I'm going to give you 8 to choose from, and then you will have a presentation. Try and keep a little time for questions, so probably 20, 25 minutes, a little time for questions, unless you are managing to be interactive with the audience throughout, and then you can use the full 30 minutes. And then you'll tell us what you found about that methodology. It's going to give us, by then you'll be choosing methodologies for your research proposal, and it's going to give you a good sort of variety of methodologies to fully appreciate and then see if it's one of those that you want to use for your own research proposal. So as you see, we're using building blocks and we're getting you there slowly. And then 7 is the full draft research proposal. So by then you've had lots of feedback from me, and this will be in the summer. So all these blocks are coming together, and you put it together. It's fairly easy, 15%, because to be honest, by then all the work is done. It's been done in blocks. All you're doing is putting it together, editing it, presenting it properly, and proofreading it and making sure that it flows, and you've sort of addressed all the issues that might have raised with you during the course. And then at the end, as I said, you are having learned what a research process is. We are showing you how to be critiquing other people's research process, so you know how to do it. So now you're able to apply the same expectations to someone else. And that's another technical exercise that you're learning for the masters, is this critical review of a journal article. You will be doing that several times during the masters. So we're teaching you how to do it in this course, and then it's something that you will repeatedly be asked to do. And that, again, we'll have a practice in class, and then you will be doing your own at the end. And then I will give you 8 articles. I think there's only 7 there. I have had to take some of them out because they were all too old now, but they will be in total, by the time we get there, 8 articles from which to choose and which to produce a review on. Okay. And then 9 is your closing blog. So it's very short, but I'm not going to ask for it at the end on Friday, because it doesn't make sense, because it's your full reflection. So you really should wait, although it's not going to be terribly time consuming, you should wait till you finish your last assignment and you've wrapped up the course as far as you're concerned. So that could be in mid-July, but that could be at the end of in mid-August if you're taking longer. But whenever you've completed everything and submitted everything and you feel that's it, I'm wrapping up the course, you're going to do your final blog. Final blog is really easy to do, because by then you have your initial blog. So you're going back in a bookend format to what you originally wrote, and then you're telling me what has changed in your perspective. So normally I find that if students do assignment 1 properly, they find assignment 9 very easy, because it's really just a matter of looking back, and you probably will see that you've had certain misconceptions, that some things you've learned, some things you see from a different light, and you're going to be synthesizing that by the end. So what that gives me a very clear, sharp snapshot of your takeaways, of the gains that you've done on the course. So it's a self-assessment of what you've learned by looking back at what you originally thought the research process to be. Assignment 4 and 9. Yes. Actually, it's more than assignment 4 and 9. I'm sorry, there's actually 3 assignments you have to do in writing. Assignment 4 is the literature review, so you don't have a choice. It has to be in writing. 9 is sorry, it's not 9. It's all mixed up. It should say assignment 4, 8, 7, and 8. Assignment 4, 7, and 8 should be in written format. 4 because it's a literature review. 7 because it's the critical review. 9 because it's the full proposal, should be in written format. But all other assignments should be submitted in a format of your choice. Sorry about that. Again, I'm working for past versions of this course, and sometimes the assignment numbers that change, or the way they were coming up has changed depending on the time for delivery. So again, for clarity, it's assignment 4, 7, and 8. So the literature review, the critical evaluation of a journal article, and the full proposal need to be done in written format, but all other assignments can be done in the format of your choice. So I think we've wrapped it for the assignment. I'm going to put that away. Writing skills. Obviously, for a lot of you have already mentioned this in your little video. For a lot of you, this is a return to the classroom and a return to academic writing. Sometimes for some of you, it's been a long time. So we are expecting you to see you develop this academic writing skill through the masters. Now, we're going to be a lot more lenient in this first course but then we expect to see a learning curve that begins from there. So during the program, you'll be finishing with these 3 assignments, 2 of which need to be in written format. I'll be giving you a lot of formative feedback on that. And then the next instructor picking up after that will probably be a little more stringent on academic writing, particularly referencing, APA style. And then those expectations keep rising through the program. So don't expect necessarily, the A minuses on writing as you begin, but we'd like to see you with those marks towards the end. So be patient and accept that there's a learning curve there. Something which I write normally here is, and the standard is by the end, your last course of the master's. It's really an experiential objective. We would like you to be able to publish work or produce work that is publishable, which means that you could send it to a journal article and they would accept it because your skills in academic writing have gained that level of confidence, and you've reached really the benchmark of the field itself. So you've got 2 years to get there. Something which I need to add there is I really recommend that you find what we call a critical reader. I had one for my master's. It was suggested to me, and it's really, really useful. A critical reader is someone else who's willing to read your assignments. They don't have to be someone who works in education. They don't have to be an academic. They are the person who can read your material and tell you if it makes sense. The danger in academic writing is sometimes we get so much into our bubble and into our jargon and into assumptions of what people know that we forget to present the material in the most limpid, concise, clear way. And yet that is always the objective of academic writing. It should be understandable by a layperson. So the critical reader is very important when you have, your wife, your husband, your next door neighbor, your mate at hockey, who's able to read that and say, yeah, I understand it. I see what you're saying. Usually it's a great test that you've succeeded. And if that person says, I don't get it, then it's time to go back to your desk and to simplify or clarify, and to move away from the assumptions that you're making. So critical reader notion is very important. Grading. So grading varies from instructor to instructor. I've worked with the Faculty of Education for a long time. I was full-time. I am pretty close, I think, to the objectives that the graduate coordinator is looking for in terms of grading, which means you're not all going to be getting A minuses. We are really encouraged to use the 80 to 90 spread. So below 70, you're not passing, you're failing. The grading is very different than undergraduate. So below 70, you're failing. 70 to 80, you haven't quite reached your objectives. 80 to 90, you are fully on the objectives. Obviously, at 91, you're really very close to exceeding the objectives. And 81, you're just barely making the objectives. But that whole range, 80 to 90, you have met the objective. So you should be very satisfied with any of these marks. And then above 90, rarely given, because really above 90, you're getting to that level of, again, the publishable, has fully achieved and gone over the objectives. So, you might get more of these marks towards the end of your program. As you begin the program, it's more rare that you get them. So just to give you an idea, because obviously marking is always subjective. It varies from faculty to faculty and university to university. So I think it's easier to clarify the objectives, and then you're not disappointed. Certainly with my marking and my course, if you're anywhere in the 80 to 90, you're doing very well. You're fully meeting the objectives. Okay. Above that, then you'd have to really be astonishing me in terms of first submission on the first course. But it happens, and I'm very good at recognizing when I see it. Okay. One last thing we have to talk about is class climate and safe space. So normally, again, if we were together, I would open this up to the whole group and say, what is safe space, and give you lots of time to talk about it. So the remarks normally which I get, people say it's about respect, it's about giving people freedom to talk, it's about not cutting people, all sorts of things like this, and they're all right. So safe space has had a really bad sort of rep, because it's one of the things that Trump and the Trump camp in the 2016 elections got hold on, and for them it represented what they criticized in terms of liberal education in post-secondary. And so it's got a bad rep, and a lot of people misunderstand now what safe space is. So I think it's really important to take the time to redefine and explain what it includes in terms of key values, and then maybe to come to an agreement that is something that we agree to respect within this course. So safe space if I let you discuss, you would eventually get there and get it all on the table, and I will be able to pick up. So I'm going to synthesize, since we're doing a bit of a flipped classroom, 3 key elements: respect of others. And that's respect intellectually, you're respecting their ideas, you're respecting, it's very important, their lived experience. They may have a lived experience that's very different than your lived experience, but you're respecting that lived experience. And it dribbles down then to from the very conceptual to the very practical. You don't cut up people while they talk, you give people space to talk, and much more nuanced as well. Don't be just satisfied with not cutting people up. Make sure sometimes that the people in your group or in your team or in the whole class have enough space to talk, right? Sometimes what we see in graduate education is we have people who talk all the time, and then there's people who don't get enough time to space for them to, to express. So sometimes respect is also about letting people talk, giving them space, right? Not always being at the forefront, making comments or asking questions, but being mindful that people sometimes need a bit more space before they can get to that level of confidence where they feel their opinions are welcome. So that's the first part, the respect part. I think right away you have to connect it to a second sort of cornerstone, and that's that you not only have to be confident that you'll be respected when you express your opinion, but you have to be willing to express your opinion. So normally one flows from the other. If you feel you're going to be respected and valued, you are going to want to express. But that's very important too, because you don't have a safe space if people are not willing to express. It comes with a degree of vulnerability, and then students when they discuss this in class normally get to it, this level of vulnerability, that you're willing to open up about things that maybe you're not opening up about in other environments. Why? Because that's what's going to make this course move forward, right? You're going to be bringing issues that are going to nurture and feed the course, and that's going to make our learning much more relevant. Hence, really, the importance. It's a priority. We must, be feeling vulnerable enough that we're willing to share personal examples from our lives, personal experience from our practice, and are willing to share those, because those are the really valuable examples that will move our discussions forward. And that goes hand in hand with being respected. But not just that, it really requires an intentional willingness to decide that, yes, I'm going to open up. And then there's the third part, which is confidentiality, which people forget about. It's all very well creating a safe space and doing that exercise of respect and that exercise of being open and wanting to speak. But no one's going to want to do that if they feel that what they are sharing and opening up about in that space is going to be taken by others and shared. So a safe space is somewhere where you discuss certain things that relate to to our practice, but you don't take them away with you. They've been placed there simply to allow as examples and fuel for the course. They're not there for you to take home and talk to your husband about. So be mindful of that. I will mention too that you'll be surprised that we work in very tight, close-knit circles, and it will not take long in terms of inclusion before we get to a situation where we're talking about, without naming names, without naming schools, we're going to be talking about something, a situation. Someone will know exactly what we're talking about, which student, which parent, which principal, because our worlds are sufficiently small that, and our circles sufficiently small that you'd be surprised how, even if I'm in Victoria and you're over there, we will eventually very quickly get to a situation where we can put names on situation if we're not using names. And that's kind of scary. We've got to be aware of that. And so to protect all of these people, we have to make sure that whatever we discuss in this course stays in this course. And people might be talking about certain student situation, might be talking about their own principal, their own administrative situations within school, and that's great. It's great that we can use all that to share, to fuel the course, but we should not be taking that with us when we leave the course. Ignore that reference to critical pedagogy. I lifted that slide from a course I was doing on critical pedagogy, but the principle is the same. So we are basically, and you can ignore this last 3 lines because really they come from my course in critical pedagogy. They're not going to be as relevant to a course on introduction to research, but all the top sort of functions. And so what I'm going to ask very symbolically in virtual form, one is that I'm opening up a thread of dialogue that will say, do you agree to the 3 principles which I discussed in terms of safe space? And I'd like you symbolically to say yes. I know it's a little silly and I know it's just typing in a word, but it does mean to me that you've acknowledged, that you've listened, you acknowledge, and that you make that commitment to those 3 principles of safe space. It's going to be very important. In every class, I get a situation where we have to remind people that we entered into that sort of contract at the beginning. It's great that we have these spaces where we can discuss openly about all these subjects, but then we have to make sure that we are explicit about the understanding on which we enter these spaces. Any remaining questions? So we are going to meet tomorrow, and I think I wrote it wrong. Let me just check quickly on my other computer. It's not 12:30 to 1. It is 12 to 12:30, I think, but I'm just going to check. So bear with me. Again, you have the course schedule, which is the master document for all of our agreement on times. So if you ever in a position when you're not sure, you just go back to that. That's your master document. So yes, I now have it in front of me. Unit 1, Monday the 6th. Our first synchronous session is 12 to 12:30 this afternoon for you guys on PI. And we will discuss anything that comes out of this. So really, your task for this first half is really easy. It's really to listen to this huge recording. I don't know how long it is. And then to take the time to go through the course outline, take the time to go through all of the directives of the assignments, take the time to explore Moodle, take the time to explore Collaborate, and then bring all questions that you have to the 12:30 class. It's more housekeeping, but it's an important part of housekeeping. So do please go through that list of tasks and make sure you do all that between by 12 to 12:30 session, so that we can really address and tackle and wrestle with all the questions that are remaining, and then we can make a move on content. So you've got a good idea now of how it's going to function. This has been maybe a little longer in the sense that I couldn't make it as interactive as it could be. In other units, the voiceover and the PowerPoint will probably contain some questions, which we'll then work on, and then you'll contribute to the virtual forum for that half day. But for this unit 1, it's a more sort of housekeeping role. So your tasks are, again, to read the course outline in detail, to read all the assignments directed in detail, to play around in Moodle and make sure you've understood all the features and where everything is, and to also play around and collaborate to make sure you understand where everything is, so that we can make a fresh start to Unit 2 in the afternoon of Monday. So bye for now, and I will see you at 12 on Monday. I'm recording this Sunday, so I will see you very soon.